Do you guys like going on road trips? Because I kind of do. Road trips are nice, although I don't like to leave the house either. I love the comfort of my home. So it's like, it depends on the mood, right? I've seen this video here. It's 5 ways British and American road trips are very different by the channel Lost on the Pond. This guy's, his name is Lawrence, and he is from England. He's lived in the United States for quite some time now, but yeah, so he shares, he does videos. He shares the differences between England and America, stuff like that. Britain and America, I guess. So links down below for that, as always. So you can go over there and hit like on the video and all that good stuff. So we're going to go ahead and check it out and find out what is different about these road trips. Last road trip I went on, like the last proper road trip, I had car problems. Somebody hit me, and then we had to rent a U-Haul truck, and then that was the whole thing.
Hello, my wife and I recently got back from a visit to West Virginia, and on that trip...
My mom's family's actually from West Virginia. I've been down there a few times. Beautiful, beautiful countryside.
It got me thinking, how do road trips compare between my homeland of Britain and the United States? With America
different.
being the land of car culture and Britain that of public transit, Americans might be thinking, is a British road trip even a thing? And yes, it is. But in my experience of doing road trips in both countries, it's a very different thing. I'm going to talk...
Yeah, and in America, everything is so far away. You just get on the highway and you drive for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. You just drive and drive and drive. Britain's smaller. It's a lot smaller. So a road trip in Britain is a very smaller thing.
Talk about that in a minute, but one other journey that I've been on recently is the long march to 1 million subscribers. If you've done that, thank you. If you haven't, do that now. In the meantime, here are 5 ways that British and American road trips are very different.
5 ways, guys. 5 ways.
Now, you can't really compare and contrast road trips in the United States with road trips in Britain without talking about the distance involved. So when we drove from Chicago to West Virginia, it was something like 400 miles. And if you were to take that distance as a percentage of the distance from the East Coast to the West Coast, it's not that much. However, if you were to do the same thing in Britain, you would end up in the sea. The point is, everyone knows at this point, America, much larger than Britain. But what happens with that is that once you move to the United States, even having grown up in Britain, your perspective of distance changes. You see, it used to be that when I was a kid, we'd drive from Grimsby, my hometown, down to the southwest coast, and it took a few hours. We thought that was an eternity, because in British terms, that is. Remember, we're a country that's the size of Wyoming. But what struck me on this road trip recently is that I didn't really consider it that long at all. I mean, granted, I am now in my 40s, so my lower back felt it, but my brain didn't. It was as if this was a normal thing to do. Of course, while I'm on the road, I get the peace of mind knowing that my name and address are far from the clutches of data brokers. You've probably heard me talk about them before. Data brokers are those entities that sell your personal information to people search sites. I'm 99% sure that this is how Suburban Sue knew my age at that city council meeting about irksome millennials. And to combat this, in 2024, I used today's sponsor, Incogni. Incogni is a personal data removal tool that not only gets in touch with those data brokers, but requests they take down your data. And it works too, because Incogni has saved me more than 150 hours of chasing down these entities and has removed my details from more than 200 sites. This means that I have more time to focus on the award-losing content for which I'm known. If your personal details are showing up on people search sites, Incogni will help you remove them. In fact, they are giving my subscribers 60% off their annual plan. Head to incogni.com/lostinthepond to get your discount and to thereafter protect your data. The link is in my description below. Of course, there's one thing that I think probably helps Americans get used to the idea of driving a bit further than we might in Britain, and that's the size of our vehicles. I may have mentioned it before, but not only is the country much bigger than the United Kingdom, but so are the cars. Not for us, we have a Prius. But you will see on American roads plenty of either trucks, which is great for transporting stuff.
Big ass vans, big ass trucks, people that don't even need a truck for anything. Like people that literally only drive their vehicle to work and home and back to work and maybe the grocery store every now and then. No reason to have a truck. And they will buy the biggest truck on the market. Then they'll lift it. Then they'll get the biggest tires they can find. It's crazy.
or those minivans. Now, that's not to say that we don't have either of those two things in Britain. They're just not as widely embraced as they are here. I've experienced this. I've travelled again to West Virginia years ago in a minivan because we had multiple people coming with us. And honestly, it was hell.
His wife must be from West Virginia then or something, because like why are they going there? You know what I mean? Nobody just goes there. People try to leave there, right?
Now that I think about it, because there were too many people, we'd overestimated the space. But I could see a situation in where the minivan would be great. I'd have the whole 3 back seats to myself, and then everybody else has to squeeze together in front of me. Because that's just who I like my personal space. America gives me that. Just not in a Prius. In Britain, we're all about smaller vehicles. I think when I was a kid, we had a Fiat Uno, tiny hatchback, and I remember we drove fairly long distances in that. Of course, I was a child. I did silly things like, lift my legs up onto the seat, or put them across my brother, or in my mum's face. And I was smaller, so it was easier. I mean, this is doing a disservice to our larger vehicles, but the point is, pound for pound, you don't have quite as much space in British cars. So it's a good job we don't drive as far. But another thing that helps put into perspective the long distances that we may or may not be travelling is how we pass the time. I've noticed that it is a common feature of road tripping in either country to play a game. It's just that the game in question may well differ.
Take, for example, Road Trip Bingo. Played in both countries, this is where passengers whip out a bingo card and check off the things they see. Whoever completes their card first wins. However, it's become clear that the items on a US bingo card don't always match those on a British one. And that's because the scenery and the things that occupy it differ somewhat on either side of the pond. For example, the UK's sheep population is around 7 times greater than that of the US, meaning it's literally impossible to have a road trip in the UK without seeing them a lot. Then again, unless you're driving through the 4 states that have banned it, the same thing might be true in the US when it comes to billboards.
Yeah, but you don't see sheep here though at all. Like sometimes, but very rarely do you see a sheep out on somebody's farm here.
Became aware of a game growing up called Spotto, and this is where you basically look out for a yellow car and then the person who sees it says Spotto. But after I moved to the US and I was driving around with my wife, she brought to my attention something I'd never heard of called Padiddle. And believe it or not, that's
if you see a car with only one headlight.
It's not something that you do at a rest stop. This is another game. You and others are on the lookout for a car whose headlight is out. And when you see that, you're supposed to say "padiddle" and hit the roof, apparently, in order to determine who it was who said it first.
And another...
I don't know about the hit the roof part. I've heard of you say "padiddle." My phone goes off at the wrong times. Shouldn't have laid it right under my microphone. Yeah. The hit the roof part. Never heard of that. There's a thing people do call slug bug. Like you see like a Volkswagen Bug, and you say slug bug.
Another pastime specific.
Pretend to punch the other person, kind of thing, or just you do it gently, like a little love tap.
To the US is the license plate game. This is where passengers observe traffic for the license plates of different states. The ultimate goal being to tally up plates from all 50 states. No equivalent for this exists in the UK, where real license plates, regardless of region, are plain old yellow. Spotto. That said, we do have a different number plate game, in which we might look out for number plates containing, say, a certain letter or number.
But the biggest thing that I've noticed is that Americans are far more likely to break out into song. I thought this was a trope of the film because it happens in...
Literally not me. You're not going to... No, I don't like... There's people that do that. There is.
In National Lampoon's Vacation and many others, until I got into a car with
Jokes,
my wife's
of course.
family.
But no, for real, I don't actually sing. But jokes, like I don't. My mom tries to sing in the car sometimes in a long trip. It's annoying. But I gotta hang out with her. She's my mom.
In Britain, I'm not saying we don't ever do that, but I think most of us are probably a bit self-conscious about the way we sing, and so that doesn't happen as often. And if it does, we'd have to be drunk, and if we're drunk, we shouldn't be using a motor vehicle. What I'm saying is we reserve the singing for weddings. Now, it's one thing that Google Maps will tell me, ooh, look, it's 9 hours to travel from here to there. But what that doesn't take into account is the fact that you're going to have to stop a lot, especially since we have a dog with us. So along the way, we got out at what Americans know as rest stops. And a lot of the time, rest stops in the United States are sort of small buildings that usually house some bathrooms, as well as
sometimes they're big. Sometimes they're like full-on stores with a whole bunch of stuff they're trying to sell you.
pamphlets displaying places to go in the local area. Occasionally, of course, you do find those larger rest stops that have a full-on food court and things like that. They exist as well. In Britain, there are one or two major differences when it comes to these outlets. Firstly, they're not called rest stops. They're known as motorway service areas. And these are usually the big kind of rest stops. You have your food courts, you have your toilets. You also have a lot more parking space. Partly that's going to be down to the fact that even though we're about the size of Wyoming, we have nearly twice the population of California. And this might also account for the fact that your parking spot within this car park is usually timed.
But it's also down to the fact that ample space is afforded to trucks, often known as lorries in Britain. It should be noted that the US concept of truck stops, in other words, stops used exclusively by trucks, are not nearly as common in the UK.
The other thing to note here is that at British rest stops, there's usually a hotel attached to it in case you need to stay there overnight. You don't typically find this at American rest stops because most towns or cities have a complex of hotels somewhere in its vicinity. Britain also has hotels, the likes of Travelodge and Premier Inn. And I'm not going to spend this time boring you with the differences between British and American hotels because I did that in a previous video. But what I am going to say is that there's a cheaper alternative in the United States that a lot of road trippers capitalize on, and that alternative is motels. Motels did originate in the United States as a portmanteau of motor hotels, and they are bog standard. About the term I would use for every motel that I've ever stayed in. There's no swimming pool, there's no jacuzzi or hot tub or anything like that. It's
those are the ones that I try to go for. They're the cheapest, but they don't have anything. You get your room, that's what you get. Sometimes you get, like, they call it a free continental breakfast, whatever. You go in there and you can get like an apple and orange, maybe some cereal, toast, some orange juice, whatever. And that's included in the your fee that you pay for the night. That's what if I go anywhere and I'm getting a room for the night, 100%, I'm going for the cheapest motel. Now, maybe not quite the cheapest, because sometimes they can get pretty sketchy. Trust me, depending on the city you're in. Oh boy, can they get sketchy. So maybe a step or two above the cheapest, just to kind of get away from that sort of riffraff, if you know what I mean. But mid-tier, price-wise, I don't need a jacuzzi. I don't need a hot tub. I don't need a stupid giant swimming pool. When I'm going to a city, I'm going to that city because I want to enjoy that city. I don't want to go to that city just to sit in a hotel room and play in a swimming pool and pay $200 extra for that and then miss out on the city that I'm there to enjoy in the first place. It doesn't even make any sense to me. I'm going to be gone most of the day. I'm literally just going to get back to the room just in time to, like, take a shower, relax, maybe watch a little TV and go to sleep. That's it. And then as soon as I wake up, I'm out and I'm going to go see more of whatever city I'm in. That's how I would do things and how I have done things in the past.
Basically just a room, and then you've got the manager's office. It's like in Psycho. We've all seen the Bates Motel. Most motels feel like that. I've never been murdered, as proven by the fact that I'm still doing this video, but I have felt like there's somebody in the room with me, and it's usually my wife, and everything's fine. From the British side of things, I have two things to say here. Firstly, because we don't travel such great distances, there might be an argument that we don't really need to stop off anywhere en route to where we're actually ending up. So a lot of the time we don't end up making that sort of overnight stay in the middle of
I mean, it's not as necessary, I wouldn't think, in England, of course,
of our journey. But if we were to do it, in my experience, we used to just check into one of those Premier Inn hotels or a travel lodge. Now, I'm not entirely sure if that's normal among all Brits who travel, or if it's just another indication that my family is really middle class.
Final
anyway,
thoughts.
Let me know in the comments if you've been on a road trip in Britain and America and what your observations were. In the meantime, I'm going to go and read about what to do in West Virginia, even though I am now home. While I'm doing that, here's a video I did back in the day about the hotel differences.
Much to do in West Virginia. Not much to do. You can look at wildlife and scenery and stuff, and maybe in the big cities. I don't know. I was in the poor area of West Virginia, McDowell County, the poorest region in America. Interesting place. But anyways, you guys have a super fun, awesome day. Go ahead and hit like and subscribe. That would be amazing. It's completely free, and it just helps the channel out. And since you're an awesome person, I know you will. So thanks for that. You guys have a super fun, awesome day, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye.